Okay, well, it's been a little while since we've done anything to this 3 horsepower 1973 Briggs and Stratton. Was on the Toro mower. So we've got the new piston rings now. Had a little bit of a dilemma when I ordered them. Seller sent the wrong ones, but managed to get that quickly resolved. And he sent me some other ones which actually appear to be genuine chrome Briggs and Stratton rings this time. What I ordered before were just copies, you know, non-genuine parts, which is basically all you can get in the UK now for these old Briggs and Strattons. But these rings seem to appear to have come straight from Briggs. So we're going to fit the oil control ring first. Obviously that's the bottom ring. We're going to have a go at fitting that from the bottom of the piston, which is usually a little bit easier for fitting this ring. So just stretch it out. Right, the ring is on there. Let's get it into the groove as quick as we can now. This will slightly mark the piston, putting it in this way, but again, there's not really a great deal that we can do there. There you go, so the oil ring is in. That's nice and easy. That is by far the easiest ring to get in. The piston rings that I had ordered before were for a 3.5 Briggs and Stratton, which would have fit, but the problem was they were for a later style, and the oil ring was much smaller, so were the compression rings, and they just didn't fit the piston at all. So we've done that now, and I have measured the gap of these piston rings in the bore. Each of them appear to have a 15 thou gap, thereabouts, on every single one. So that's pretty fair sized gap, but at least it's consistent. I mean, there's not much I can do bar actually boring this piston out, boring the bore out and fitting another piston, but that's just going way over the top. Then we're just going to be spending far too much time on this engine. Okay, now we've got to fit the second piston ring. And we actually have some instructions on the packaging here. The piston ring has this little step out of it at the bottom, and by the looks of the instructions, the marked side, that side there, has got to face down to the bottom of the ring, so we can see that little stepped out bit at the bottom of the piston ring there. So we're going to install that towards the bottom of the piston, which appears to be how it's done on the packaging. So, you know, if that was meant to face upwards, they would have put that image facing upwards. So again, just going to make sure we've got it the right way up. First of all, work it onto the piston. Okay, trying not to get it into the second groove. Try to avoid getting it into the second groove. So we're going to use 2 feelers off my feeler gauges to try and step it into the second ring without putting it into the first ring. Scat. This is the first time I've ever put piston rings on in a Briggs and Stratton engine. I've done it before on Suffolk engines and a few other small air-cooled engines, but this is the first time we've ever attempted it at Briggs and Stratton. So do bear with me. It's actually popped into the first groove. It's something we didn't really want it to do, but oh well, sometimes you can't odds it. It's just the way it goes. Use the same method we used for getting these piston rings off and into the second. going okay. Right, there we have it. That's the second ring, according to the instructions. Correctly positioned. It's a nice good fit in the piston groove as well. You want to check that as well. When you order these rings, it's quite easy for people to send the wrong ones, so just check to make sure they're a nice fit in the groove. There shouldn't be too much up and down movement from the ring in the groove. Obviously you get a lot of movement like that until they're compressed and in the bore, but just when you order new rings, make sure they fit the piston rings okay, and make sure you have a decent sized gap in the bore. So like we did when we measured the old rings, push the piston ring into the bore, work it down with the piston so it's nice and level, and start measuring your gap. All these piston rings were consistent gap of 15 thou, so we've just gone ahead and installed them. Sometimes if you get too tight a gap, or if they won't go in at all, you're going to have to clamp a file in the vise and work your piston ring up and down in the file to increase the gap a little bit. That's the only way to do it, but usually the piston rings are okay. Usually they will go straight in. Right, so that's our second ring in, and our bottom ring is also in. Now for the top groove. And according to this, we want this chamfered area. Camera isn't very good for close-ups again, sorry. But there's a chamfered area on the inside of the ring that wants to face to the top of the piston ring. And the top ring should be as easy as the oil control ring to get in. It should just pop in fairly easy. Right, just make sure we got that right. Just double check that again. Seems to be correct. And there we have it. All three rings are now installed in the piston. Pretty easy. Might need a pair of feeler gauges to install the second ring. The oil control ring could work up from the bottom of the piston, so that's nice and easy. The top ring and the third oil control ring are the easiest ones to get in. The second one will usually pop into the first ring gap, but you know, into the first groove of the piston. So we just had to use a couple of thou feeler gauges just to work that out of that groove and into the second one. But they're in. There's nothing more to do to that piston now. That went pretty easily. Okay, well, we're going to install the piston now. And from what I've been told, you don't need to hone these blocks because they got an aluminium bore. So all I've done is very lightly pass my honing tool, literally 2 passes by hand, well oiled, just to remove a tiny little bit of glazing, and we haven't got much scratching in the bore at all, so I think that should be okay. This engine isn't going to see a lot of use, but I would, if you're rebuilding one of these, I'd recommend just seeing if you do have to hone them or not. From what I've been told, you don't have to hone them, so. And apparently lots of honing could cause the piston rings to wear quicker, apparently, so you know, it's worth checking out. Just going to clean that front bearing before we slot the crankshaft in. Just going to slot the crank in now, makes it a little bit easier whilst the piston is out. So put a little bit of oil in there. We'll put a little tiny bit on the crankshaft as well, just to help it when we go to first start it, before oil gets splashed everywhere. Just make sure there's no dirt there. doesn't appear to be. Should be okay. Okay, well, one good thing about doing lots of video on this rebuild series, I didn't take note of which way the piston was in the bore. So fortunately enough, by actually filming it all, I've been able to look back and know that the piston needs to sit with the connecting rod bolts pointing in this direction towards the cam. So that's how it was, so that's how we're going to put it back. Just check to make sure the piston is relatively clean. We'll put a little bit of oil just to help it out. Okay. Move the crankshaft so the piston's going to be at bottom dead centre, and start to work those rings in. I don't have a ring compressor, so we're going to be doing this as always by hand. We'll put our oil scraper in over that side, one compression ring there, one compression ring over there, just stagger them about, just a wee little tiny bit. Right, let's see if we can get this oil scraper ring in. Okay, now we just want to nip out our connecting rod bolts at 7/16. Nip them up. You don't typically have to do them up ridiculously tight. They do have locking tabs as well. Alright, let's just check. Things still moving relatively freely. It's going to be a little bit tight. New piston rings, you can't expect it just to fly over. You know, it's not going to be ridiculously free at the moment. But it's free enough. There's no real noticeable, tight spots, so that's pretty good. Right, now we just need to bend down those locking tabs, which are usually relatively easy, but we are prepared for them to be difficult this time. Okay, well, I started to bend them over with a pair of pliers. Now we can just gently tap the rest of the tab down. That's pretty good. It's not bad. And just do the same to the other one. Just tapping it down. Usually you know if you've tightened up the connected rod bolts enough when they're nice and tight, because the locking tabs should be bending over in virtually the same place, which they appear to be doing, so we're not doing too badly. Just tap those down until you're happy with them. There's no real spec or look for how they should look. They will get a bit mangled up, but they'll still do their job. They look to be okay. Those should be alright.